Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with the midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of it as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place that you can come watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now, and take advantage whenever you feel ready, if you wish to do so, of course, pending any incremental legislation or reform that we might get in the near term. So thought I would start us off with some Don Murphy, 2:55 p.m. as of yesterday, providing this good news about the potential for a safe filibuster from our opposition. And it's very unlikely because we've got the votes.
Hey, Twitter friends, Tom
Love to hear it.
From Capitol Hill had a very interesting conversation with a hard no senator this morning, and it amounted to this. I asked him, are you likely to lead a filibuster? And he said, I would if I could win. I would if I had the votes.
Small W's.
What I've known for
Small victories.
I've shared with you all. Filibuster is out of the question. Regardless of what might have been said by leadership in the past, we have the votes to win. We have the votes to kill a filibuster, and even our opposition knows it. So anyway, that is great news. That's not the kind of thing most people even think to share, but I thought you'd find it interesting.
So thank you, Don, for the updates as always, and he will be doing a Spaces with MJ Stock Trader on Thursday. That is the last link, so while we start with Don, we will end with him. But again, thank you, Don, for being our boots on the ground. And so for what it's worth, sharing from Do the Right Thing, this past week, as of yesterday, 2:50 p.m., Safe Banking got 13 new co-sponsors in the House in the last week, and so we'd rather see that than not for what it's worth. Well, if we go to Congress.gov and click, we can see that it is certainly picking up steam. As of right now, 47 co-sponsors in the House. There are 31 Dems, 16 Republicans. Well, this is the House. From my understanding, the Senate already has the votes. It's had it for a long time, so we just need as many in the House to get on board as well. And so I think it's very promising that as we move through April, May, and then into June, it continues to gain momentum with more and more co-sponsors. And even in the last week, we had 6 new co-sponsors as of last Wednesday, and then 8 new ones as of Monday. And so rather see that than not. But with that from Tom Engel, new American Psychiatric Association poll finds that U.S. adults consider cannabis to be significantly less dangerous than cigarettes, alcohol, and opioids. Yeah, no shit, because it is. It's just a fact. And believe cannabis is less addictive than each of those substances as well as technology. I would say from personal experience, it is as well. But if we go across the board, percentage of rating, very or somewhat unsafe. Notice that cannabis is the second lowest behind technology here. Non-prescription opioids, prescribed opioids, alcohol, vapes, cigarettes, all much higher rating, being very or somewhat unsafe. And then percentage rating, very or somewhat addictive. We actually have cannabis being the least addictive here, 64% compared to 75% tech, 87 cigarettes, 81 vapes, and I would say tech's probably the most addictive out of all these too. 84% alcohol, 83% prescribed, and 74% non-prescribed. Well, I'm not surprised by these findings whatsoever. You just love to see more Americans being honest, especially during this time of mass conformity, because we need more honesty and the truth now more than ever. And so this is the full article from Marijuana Moment. Of course, you can grab the full link in the description, but figured I'd bring you to some of the bulk of the data so you can pause to read. So this is the first bit, and then you can pause to read this bit down here. And then last bit, just the irony is a bit too much. I had to point it out. In 2022, opiates killed more than 100,000 people, which is tragic. And this is a fact stated by the APA, American Psychiatric Association CEO, and medical director Saul Levin. Ironic that he omits when you legalize cannabis, like we've seen in 2014, the Harvard study and many studies since, you see a 25% reduction in opioid overdoses. Why does he not mention medical cannabis? Because you can't sell it in the form of a prescription medication. The American Psychiatric Association, right? How tragic. It really just points out their true colors. But then he says, well, it's encouraging that most Americans see substance use disorder as a treatable medical condition, because yes, addiction is when you try to get to the root of the problem and solve it there, as opposed to giving medication in the form of Band-Aids and never actually solving the root of the problem. We can do more to ensure that more of us in our communities are aware of and can access this synthetic THC prescription medication known as naloxone, which saves lives. So again, points out their true colors when all we want is to deschedule the plant and give the plant back to us so we can use the flower, by our own means, however we find it useful. And so they'll be launching a public awareness campaign on addiction, but of course they did not mention cannabis in that education campaign because cannabis is not nearly as addictive as some of these other things, but again, at the same time, they cannot make money off cannabis because the Psychiatric Association is incentivized to sell those opioids. And so ironically though, on top of that, and so just as the American public is making more sense now than ever, giving Congress one of the easiest layups they've ever had if only they still work for the American people. And I think by the end of June, we should find out whether they still do or don't. But at the same time, we're seeing groups like this expose themselves for really just how stupid they are. So we got to continue to make noise, folks, and keep the momentum going, because get this. Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America is urging Congress to reject a cannabis banking bill, arguing it would lead to negative consequences. Like what? Less banks failing because they have the liquidity and the cash they need, or less Americans dying because dispensaries are not targets for robberies anymore? No, they think negative consequences will be including increased traffic fatalities, youth use rates, ER visits, and hospitalizations. Like, how stupid. They don't even know what is in the bill. Great comment, Ryan. Like, they have not read the Safe Banking Act if that's literally what they believe. Because, I mean, we've known for how long teen cannabis use trends downward as more states legalize it for adults. Federal U.S. survey finds as of February 17th, 2023. And then this is another study different from the Harvard one I referenced, but found that statistically significant 27% reduction in opioid overdose mortality in states with active and legal cannabis dispensaries compared to those without. So how can this group be this stupid? Almost makes me think that SAFE is actually going to pass this time. And obviously, to just back it up with more data, from February 2023, relationship between sales of legal medical cannabis and alcohol in Canada. The country's 2017 to 2018 alcohol sales were roughly 1.8% lower than they would have been without legal medical cannabis. And so I wonder what the Community of Anti-Drugs Coalitions of America thinks about that, especially when you consider that one of these substances talked about is one of the most dangerous drugs. It's a depressant and responsible for a lot of crime and death, unfortunately, while the other one is a flower that is still stuck in the Schedule 1 where it never belonged in the first place. So riddle me that. Well, we've got another study as of June 13th, as of yesterday, analysis. Proximity to cannabis dispensaries not correlated with higher rates of youth use. Of course, you cannot make this shit up. We've known this for a long time. So of course, you can pause to read most of it, but just going to relay the highlights as normal's Deputy Director Paul Armentano said the latest findings add to the growing body of scientific literature showing that cannabis can be successfully regulated in a manner that provides access for patients and adults while simultaneously limiting youth access and misuse. And the study findings are consistent with those of numerous other studies failing to identify a link between state-level cannabis legalization and increased use by adults. And so take that, dumbass industry groups. And so on to some state sales. Greenway magazine points out Missouri posts fourth straight month of 100 plus million in cannabis sales as of June 9th, so we love to see it. So you can pause to read for a bit more here, and a little graph as well, but main thing is the breakdown is a bit below this. By the numbers, recapping February, March, and then April. Main thing, May marks the first month in more than a year that Missouri's licensed retailers processed less than 30 million in medical sales in a month, while adult use sales remain strong at 92.6 million. And I don't know if they put the exact number where it got to, but essentially it seems like they did surpass 120 million, as it seems to be the stable benchmark for the future going forward. But yeah, I did look for a total exact breakdown, and I don't think I could find it. So if you do find it, let me know in the comments. But love to see Missouri continue to trailblaze and lead the way in the Midwest. And so with that, from Marijuana Moment, Connecticut rec sales reached record high in May, exceeding medical cannabis purchases for the first time. And so we love to see that in Connecticut, as rec is starting to surpass medical. So the State Department of Consumer Protection published the May sales data on Monday, showing about 11.5 million in adult use sales versus 11.2 million in medical, for a total of 22.7 million for the month. And so May marked the first time that rec sales outpaced medical again, so definitely noteworthy. And monthly adult use sales have more than doubled since retailers opened shop. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. I'll bring you down a little bit more if you wanted to pause to read what's in here. Otherwise, full link in the description. But while Connecticut is a very small and newly launched program, we do love to see those numbers going up, and of course, seeing rec beat medical. But on top of that, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont signed budget legislation that includes provisions to decouple state tax policy from the federal 280E provision, thereby allowing cannabis companies to deduct business expenses in their state filings. And so we love to see legal companies getting relief in Connecticut, as they should, obviously, across the country, and many are in certain legal states that are taking this action. But we love to see it in Connecticut, so this will save them some money and allow these companies to keep some profit, especially these small mom and pop shops and social equity entrepreneurs that, again, likely will not be able to sustainably operate their business for more than a few years, having to deal with not only criminal lending rates, but on top of that, predatory tax rates. You cannot make this shit up. The only industry in America that is discriminated against like this, because they are changing the status quo for the better. And so small victory for the companies in Connecticut, while on the same day signed into law, Illinois eliminates their state conformity with IRS Section 280E for cannabis businesses. And of course, we're holding out for just descheduling straight up, which would eliminate 280E. That would be the dream. But until we get there, happy to report that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the bill into law, and that that provides limited but important state tax relief for cannabis businesses despite ongoing federal cannabis prohibition. While I don't believe it's much, I think for every 100 mil in revenue, they might keep 10 more in profit, but it's a small step in the right direction, no doubt. So more here if you wanted to pause to read. And then effect on federal prohibition, you can pause to read this snippet here. Well, a growing movement last bit as well. Of course, full link in the description if you wanted to go through it. But with that, Alabama medical cannabis licenses start going out on Monday. And so we're even seeing states like Alabama starting to act and get their medical program going, which we love to see. Commission expects more lawsuits to be filed after the initial round because people are going to be pissed they didn't get selected. I wish people weren't such sore losers, but for what it's worth, according to the Alabama Daily News, what was released this week, which includes 12 cultivation permits, 4 processor permits, 4 dispensary licenses, and 5 permits for vertically integrated companies. And so this is the full article if you wanted to pause to read. But we did get an update as of June 12th, and these are the 21 companies out of the 90 that applied that the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission awarded licenses to. And so if we scroll down, you will recognize one of the Tier 1 MSOs that did win an integrated facility. So nice to see Verano, one of the Tier 1 MSOs, getting their footprint expanded into some newer, less competitive markets early on. And then with that, the winners of the cultivator, processor, dispensary, transporter, and testing lab licenses as well. And so of course you can pause to read or grab the link in the description. But while we're in the South, figured I would share this from Mississippi media, as Mississippi is now up to 14,000 medical cannabis cards. Great to see that many Mississippians are getting access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative, and this is after recently launching their program, and so they're seeing an uptick as more and more patients are getting cards. And so according to Rep. Lee Yancey, roughly 2 or 3% of a participating state's population typically registers for a medical cannabis card. And I wonder if there was any education or if you were allowed to advertise cannabis as a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative. I'm sure that number would go up a whole lot, but you can't advertise on TV like you can with prescription medication, unfortunately. But in Mississippi, they're projecting that will be around 60,000 cardholders in time. Good news is that they're already at 14,000. But Yancey says the number of cardholders is increasing as more businesses begin to open dispensaries throughout the state. You can pause to read, but love to see Mississippi's medical program heating up, while New Mexico workers joining the cannabis industry earn more than in their previous non-cannabis jobs, according to the state. And so nice to see that those who have the courage to join the industry are finding that the grass is actually greener on the other side and in something new. But worth noting that out of 4,666 workers in New Mexico that were employed in the industry as of launching April 2022, nearly 9 in 10 of those employees, according to the Department of Workforce Solutions report, found worked in the retail sector. And I think it's wise for everyone to work in retail once so that they never want to work in retail again. But good to see any American industry providing opportunity and job growth to Americans. Very few in this day and age. So you can pause to read, but then this is a chart, average weekly wage of the cannabis cohort, just compared to what they were previously getting elsewhere. And then this was worth pointing out as wage records for roughly a third of cannabis workers indicated they've come from other industries, and the most common industries were trade, transportation, and utilities at 11.1%, followed by leisure and hospitality, 8.4%. That's to be expected. Education, health, and services, you'd think this would be a bit higher, but 4.4%. Once cannabis is more normalized and seen as a medicine, then that'll definitely go up. And professional and business services, 4.2%. So you can pause to read this bit. While there's one more image worth showing, you can pause to read, but then cannabis firms by county, just to see how it is distributed throughout the state. And then obviously light green means there's less dispensaries, darker green means there's more. So full link in the description if you want to go through that. But on to some MSO news, is Verano to introduce best-in-class operations in Alabama market after winning coveted vertical license. And so good job, Verano, for winning that. Not going to spend too much time on this, but of course, if you're interested in Verano or you are a shareholder, definitely worth pausing to read or going through to grab the full link. But I'll leave it here. And then, of course, if you want to read a little bit more down here, just so that you don't have to go grab it. While apparently Trulieve is opening a new dispensary in Phoenix, Arizona. Opening of Trulieve dispensary on Tatum Boulevard continues brand a promise of offering the right products at the right price in the right place in growing Phoenix market. Well, Arizona's been a bit more of a curse than a blessing for Trulieve after buying Harvest. It's nice to see them focusing on opening more stores in the heavily populated downtown cores. And while we haven't heard much news out of Arizona, it's been very quiet. It's nice to hear something, but I imagine Trulieve is still just working hard on cutting costs and getting back to cash flow positive, the old Trulieve that we knew and love. And so for what it's worth, just figured I would share this article too. It's from an Arizona publication, City Sun-Times, randomly just on how the Safe Banking Act being passed in Congress would help the Arizona industry. No doubt. And is it possible this is being written because SAFE actually has a better chance now? You'd like to think so. But a broader banking solution for Arizona's cannabis industry would promote growth, for all legal businesses across the U.S., no doubt. And so, of course, you can pause to read or grab the link in the description to go through the full thing. Just wanted to share that. But with that, from Sabatino, highlighting, again, a long video, 4 minutes and 18 seconds, but just relaying that the U.S. cannabis company TerrAscend is planning to go where no other U.S. cannabis company has gone before, the Toronto Stock Exchange. Lots of doubt, but as many have suggested, it's already been discussed as long as reorganization is approved. And from my understanding, the shareholder vote is to be held on June 22nd, and they plan to move quickly after that. And so, like I said, we have a lot of stuff we're waiting for the end of June. Not only TerrAscend uplisting, the potential Cresco and Columbia Care deal going through, and then the potential, markup on safe banking leading to a vote. And so with that, onto some studies from MedRiv. Cannabinoid terpene formulation that increases restorative sleep in insomniacs, a double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized crossover pilot study. And so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can pause to read study objective methods and results, but conclusion, these results, if confirmed in larger clinical trials, and of course we would love to see more larger clinical trials on humans as opposed to just mice, suggest that select CBD terpene ratios that increase SWS and REM restorative sleep have the potential to provide a safe and efficacious alternative to commonly prescribed sleep medications. So sounds very promising. Get this, is these results, if confirmed in larger clinical trials, and it's very unfortunate because larger clinical trials require funding, and typically Big Pharma is the one that funds a lot of these studies. They're not going to fund something that's going to eat into its own market share, sadly. Why do we got to deschedule it? Should have been done decades ago, but suggests that CBD might offer a promising alternative to other sleep medications and aids. Tell me Big Pharma is not afraid of losing market share in this niche, in pain, inflammation, other niches as well. And so we've got another study here, brought you right down to the conclusion just to highlight the main takeaway from it. We'll get to the top in a moment, but cannabis has an excellent safety profile and is a historically established medicine. Pragmatic, long-term studies can further confirm its safety and effectiveness. And again, deschedule so we can have them or find other funding resources besides Big Pharma that doesn't want to see any of this evidence come to light. But real-world example is the best way to get clinically useful data on medical cannabis. In addition to controlled clinical research, it is imperative to supplement such efforts with studies that assess the impacts of cannabis medicine in the real world and outside of a laboratory setting, i.e. having a larger clinical study on actual humans as opposed to mice. Why haven't we done this by now? Especially when the plant has never killed anyone in its entire history, right? Mind-boggling. A good reminder, like that video that went viral recently, while it's tempting to attribute malice to that which we can attribute incompetence, it's just frustrating when all we see across the board is incompetence, incompetence, incompetence. But then get this, after delivering all this factual information in a great way, the researchers decide to save their only typo for the last sentence, as we hope that this paper will aid policymakers and prescribers understand the value of real-world evidence. To understand, in understanding. And so with that, just wanted to bring you to the top, as this was a very important study, I think, older from 2022, but the value of real-world evidence. What do patients actually have to say? Should that not be, as much, or if not more compelling than peer-reviewed studies that we have seen over time that are often not replicable? And so, Case of Medical Cannabis from PubMed, read it and weep. Well, we got another one from Journal of Education, Health and Sport. Get this, current state of knowledge on the use of cannabidiol in various medical conditions from June 7th, 2023. Now, if we go down to results, CBD is an effective novel treatment option in Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, tuberous sclerosis complex, and Dravet syndrome. Data supporting CBD's applicability in anxiety, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, insomnia, pain, autoimmune diseases, osteoporosis, and as an anti-aging agent is promising, but more research on bigger groups of patients is needed to establish its role in modern medicine. Really, eh? You're just going to make all those claims and then say, but more research is needed. What we're used to, but then get this conclusions. Clinicians need to monitor new data from ongoing CBD trials, but at present, there is no hard evidence supporting effectiveness of CBD in various medical conditions apart from epilepsy. Achoo! Sorry, folks, I'm allergic to bullshit, and my allergies just keep acting up the more studies I read. Can you imagine how easy it is to be one of these researchers, never finding any new information after doing all this research? But good thing from Pharmaceutical Technology, as of June 12, 2023, the future of pain medication. Are cannabinoids the solution to the opioid epidemic? Well, for those of you that don't know, the government has had a patent on cannabinoids since the 2000s for a very long time. All the while, politicians claim to be working for you and that the status quo was in the best interest of your public health while letting cannabis rot away in the Schedule and classification. Now, it wouldn't be funny if at the same time this wasn't true. When if we look at, these are apparently drugs that are in the pipeline for the FDA to test and approve potentially, active non-opioid painkiller pipeline drugs by top 10 targets. And if you look at the bottom, we see cannabinoid receptor 1, cannabinoid receptor 2. And it seems like these two are leading the way with the largest number of drugs set to potentially be approved by the FDA. So I could be getting this wrong. Please correct me in the comments if I am. But from my understanding of these 458 drugs targeting cannabinoid receptors are currently the two most popular targets, with 35 drugs in development for CB2 and 32 targeting CB1, accounting for approximately 10% of pipeline drugs. Yet how can cannabis still be in the Schedule 1? You cannot make this shit up. And so hope there's a solution coming, especially a miracle one that is just straight up descheduling. Again, folks, plan accordingly for your own situation, but it's just absolute nonsense. I'm sure you can agree with me. Let me know in the comments if you're frustrated too. But even from around the globe, Cannabis Health, new findings prompt calls for wider access to medicinal cannabis in New Zealand, as a new study adds to the growing body of evidence for the positive effects of cannabis on pain, sleeplessness, and anxiety. Figured I would add this for what it's worth, as when 200 people were prescribed medication and involved in a study, or were prescribed cannabis and involved in a study, 96% reported that taking cannabis helped them with a number of conditions. 49% said they were able to reduce or entirely stop their prescription medicine, right? So more here if you want to pause to read, otherwise you can grab the full link. Well, there's another one from Australia. I might have shared this one in the past, but again, just relaying all the information for what it's worth. Patients with unmet mental health needs are turning to medicinal cannabis. This is out of Australia. And so new research shows Australian healthcare practitioners are often prescribing medicinal cannabis for psychiatric conditions where the evidence for effectiveness is unclear. Well, according to Philip Ritchie, who writes for Science or Political Science, I'll let you read through it and be the judge if you like. Otherwise, full link in the description. But with that, some other state stories before we go. Apparently from MJ Biz Daily, states act to deny licenses for cannabis companies with debt woes. Hello, maybe go after some illegal operators in New York. That might help, save the legal ones, those that you promised to work for in the first place. So all that to say, it seems state regulators and government officials nationwide are taking steps to ramp up enforcement against cannabis companies that fail to pay vendors, taxes, or business fees. As New Jersey is the latest to take a hard line against delinquent operators, revoking cultivation and manufacturing licenses in early June from a company with unpaid fees. And to me, this is just so sad because, one, had SAFE passed a year ago, these operators might not have forced to become delinquent. Secondly, is obviously you got to recognize that this industry is the only industry in all of the United States of America that is discriminated against, ironically, for dealing with a medicinal plant. But because of that, they face predatory loan rates and the predatory 280E tax. And then on top of that, that some of these regulators who promised equal access to opportunity, especially for social equity entrepreneurs, probably licking their chops at the opportunity to use their power, abuse it, and shut these people down for not being able to pay these ridiculous taxes or exorbitant fees because of the discrimination they face. And so it's really sad to me. Obviously, if you are delinquent, then you should be held accountable, but it's just the conditions have made it so hard, and hence why the tier ones are going to be some of the few left able to operate. But it joins California, Michigan, and Nevada, New York, and Oregon in targeting such companies. Hopefully New York will target some more of the illicit ones, but I'm just going to pause it here, or leave it here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the description goes through more in what some other states are doing. But then get this one, randomly from LA Weekly, came out this week, June 12th. American cannabis industry nears $30 billion valuation, which is true. And again, safe banking will go a long way, helping give banks liquidity and making America safer, getting this cash off the streets. So I think I featured this data from BDSA before. And pause to read, but main thing I wanted to bring you down to was the bottom. And if you listen to that Twitter Spaces with Boris Jordan, he was telling us how dire the situation is in California and how they need tax cuts of about 50% for any of them to be able to stay afloat and compete with the illicit market. But notice what they say, even with the decline in sales, California is still expected to represent a massive chunk of the U.S. cannabis industry for the foreseeable future. Who's going to be right, Boris or them? I'm tempted to think it's Boris, especially when they mention a lot about California here and don't mention a single thing about the exorbitant taxes that are forcing a lot of these operators to no longer renew licenses or just go delinquent. So we'll see what happens. But with that, another example from Graham Farrar, who works for Glasshouse in Cali, and we'll get to the issues they're dealing with in a moment. But an additional note that 4 of the 5 of these kill people, right? And 1 is medicine. If anything, maybe this taxation should be the other way around. And that is a great point. It's ridiculous to think that all of these substances are taxed at so little when they lead to a lot of crime and death, yet the substance that is by far the healthiest and seen as a popular medicine is by far the most expensive, costing us the most. Why are we even putting up with this? It's time for us to revolt, is it not? And from MJ Biz Daily, as Czech Republic might push ahead with cannabis legalization, analyst says. Well, I'll believe it when I see it or once the news comes out, and that's according to a research note from Owen Bennett, an analyst from New York headquartered investment banking company Jefferies. And so you can pause to read what Owen Bennett has to say, but figured I'd bring you down to this bit. As Business of Cannabis reported that Czech Minister of Health Vlastimil Valek was waiting for Germany to unveil its draft laws and to see how the European Commission responds, citing the health sector news website zapravi.cz. Then Toronto-based publication noted that the more cautious approach is at odds with the Czech anti-drug coordinator Jindřich Voboril, who's actually pro-legalization, which seems, who's reportedly pushing ahead with the establishment of a commercial market. good job, Gingrich Vaboro, for seeing the opportunity. But of course, there could be unforeseen political hurdles. So for just sharing that for what we know so far. But that story on Glasshouse, figured I would share it from LMC, who makes some good documentaries about cannabis. But breaking, cannabis company Catalyst files legal complaint against Glasshouse Brands, alleging that Glasshouse is one of the largest black marketers in the state of California, if not in the entire country. And from my understanding, they do run a legal grow and supply legal stores. I don't know much about it, but just sharing it for what it's worth. But there is a video if you wanted to grab the link in the description to learn more about this. But with that, thank you connoisseurs.io for finding this. More on Kevin Sabet, the human piece of garbage. I've learned about Sam and the anti-cannabis lobbying 501c living large on the back of his nonprofit. It must be nice to sell your soul and live in ignorance like this. I mean, I couldn't do it, but clearly he's getting good at it. Hasn't filed Form 990 in 3 years, so he's about to get the tax exemption revoked per IRS rules, and we'd love to see that. And so if you look at the organization, it seems there's only one employee. He works 20 hours a week, and for that measly propaganda, he gets paid $137,599. Must be nice to sell your values and principles for money. May the Lord have mercy on this poor little sad man's soul. And with that, last bit before we head off, reminder for tomorrow, Thursday, 7 p.m., upcoming spaces with MJ Stock Trader and Don Murphy, who we saw in the video at the beginning, hopefully providing us with a bit of an update. But of course, from now, again, until the end of June, a lot of stuff we were looking forward to. And so keep coming back if you want to stay up to date on the latest news. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to try and address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it, subscribe below, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.